Have you ever wondered why life sometimes throws you into situations that feel absurd, unpredictable, or even a little ridiculous? Moments where everything you thought was stable suddenly collapses, and you're left questioning if there's any meaning at all. These are the moments when the archetype of the trickster makes its entrance. The trickster is not just a mythological figure hiding in old stories, it's a living, breathing force within the human psyche. You can see it in folklore as Loki in Norse mythology, Coyote in Native American tales, or Hermes in Greek tradition. But you also see it in the everyday when irony strikes, when your carefully laid plans unravel in the blink of an eye, when chaos barges in without knocking. Jung believed the trickster was not simply a character but a psychic pattern, an archetype that challenges us, disrupts us, and ultimately reshapes us. Imagine for a moment you're moving steadily through life. You've built routines, habits, maybe even an identity you cling to. Then suddenly, something unexpected happens. Your car breaks down on the way to an important meeting, a joke exposes a truth you were avoiding, or you encounter a person who flips your worldview upside down. It feels inconvenient, even humiliating, but if you step back, you see that these disruptions can also open doors. This is the paradox of the trickster. It destroys but also creates. It mocks but also reveals. Carl Jung saw the trickster as one of the earliest archetypes that emerges in myths, representing the raw, untamed energy of the unconscious. The trickster does not play by the rules because he is the one who exposes the rules as illusions. He destabilizes our certainties, pulling away the masks of the persona we hide behind. Where the hero archetype builds, the trickster where the sage teaches wisdom, the trickster teaches humility by showing us our own foolishness. Think about humor. Why do we laugh when someone slips on a banana peel or when a comedian says something outrageous? Part of us recognizes the absurdity of life, the fragility of our seriousness. Humor, at its core, is trickster energy at play. It undermines authority, punctures ego, and lets us see the cracks in what we thought was solid. Even sarcasm or irony, though sometimes sharp, can serve as the trickster's tool to reveal hidden truths. In your personal life, the trickster often appears when you're clinging too tightly to an image of yourself. Maybe you're the responsible one, always in control, the dependable rock in your family or workplace. Then one day you make a silly mistake, something so out of character it embarrasses you. That's the trickster reminding you that you're human, that the persona you've built is only one mask, not the whole self. It feels like mockery, but beneath it lies an invitation to loosen up, to embrace imperfection, and to grow beyond rigid roles. On a cultural level, the trickster shows up when society becomes too rigid, too dogmatic, too satirists, comedians, and artists often channel this archetype to challenge authority and expose hypocrisy. Think of how late-night comedy in America constantly pokes fun at politicians and institutions. Behind the laughter, the trickster archetype is doing its work, tearing down inflated egos, shaking systems that take themselves too seriously. Yet, the trickster is not always gentle. Sometimes it enters through painful chaos. A betrayal, a sudden loss, or a shocking revelation can feel like the cruel hand of fate. Jung would say that when these experiences shatter our illusions, they also bring us closer to wholeness. The trickster archetype, in its destructive play, forces us to confront parts of ourselves and our lives that we would rather ignore. This archetype also lives within you. You might notice it when you sabotage yourself right at the moment of success, or when you playfully tease a loved one in a way that reveals something deeper than words alone could. The trickster is both the saboteur and the liberator. It undermines control so that transformation can occur. So, when chaos strikes, when you find yourself laughing at the absurdity of it all, ask, is this the trickster at work? Instead of resisting, what if you leaned in? What if the confusion, the failure, the joke, was not a curse but a doorway? Jung believed that embracing the trickster meant acknowledging that life is not always rational, that the unconscious speaks in riddles and jokes, and that meaning often hides in what first looks meaningless. The trickster archetype is uncomfortable, yes, but also essential. Without it, we would cling to rigidity, convinced our masks and routines are all there is. With it, we are humbled, shaken, and sometimes laughed at, but in that laughter lies freedom, the freedom to let go of false certainty, to adapt, and to see beyond the illusion of control. Life has a way of unsettling us when we least expect it. Just when you believe you've established a sense of order, the trickster archetype slips in, pulling the rug out from under your certainty. Jung understood this not as mere bad luck, but as a psychic necessity. Without the trickster, we risk stagnation, trapped in rigid patterns that slowly drain our vitality. With the trickster, we are reminded that the psyche thrives in movement, contradiction, and paradox. In myths across cultures, the trickster is both feared and celebrated. The Native American coyote is mischievous, clever, and often disruptive, yet he brings important lessons. Loki in Norse mythology embodies chaos, deception, and rebellion, yet his antics set in motion transformations that no other god could provoke. Even in modern storytelling movies, novels, and television, you can see trickster figures who use humor, trickery, or subversion to challenge the established order. From the Joker in Batman to Bugs Bunny in classic cartoons, the trickster appears as both villain and hero, mocking the structures that others treat as sacred. Jung's insight was that these myths are not just stories but mirrors of the human mind. The trickster outside is also the trickster within. When your ego grows too comfortable, when your identity becomes a rigid mask, the unconscious deploys trickster energy to break through. Sometimes it's through embarrassing mistakes, sometimes through absurd coincidences, and sometimes through ironic reversals that strip away pretense. This is not the work of an enemy, but of a deeper intelligence pushing you toward growth. Think of a moment when something went hilariously wrong in your life. Maybe you mispronounced a word in an important presentation. Your technology failed during a job interview, or you found yourself caught in an awkward misunderstanding. At first, the humiliation stings, but afterward you might notice how it exposed your vulnerability, made you more human, and even connected you to others through laughter. The trickster teaches us to stop worshipping perfection and to find strength in imperfection. In the therapeutic space, this archetype often emerges in subtle ways. A patient might avoid serious topics with humor, resisting the weight of truth. While it can seem like a distraction, Jungian analysts recognize that even avoidance carries meaning. The trickster's laughter is not just silliness, it's a defense, but also an opening. Behind the joke lies pain, and behind the pain lies the possibility of healing. The trickster, in this sense, protects by misdirecting but ultimately invites confrontation with what has been hidden. On a collective level, society's tricksters are comedians, artists, and rebels who refuse to take the status quo at face value. In America, late-night shows use comedy to address political hypocrisy, and stand-up comedians speak uncomfortable truths wrapped in laughter. It's no accident that humor often becomes sharpest in times of crisis, when authority grows oppressive, when institutions lose credibility, or when people feel trapped by convention. The trickster archetype surges forward to remind everyone that no system is invincible, no leader untouchable, no dogma permanent, but there is a danger in ignoring or suppressing the trickster. If you try to silence chaos entirely, it grows louder in the unconscious. Repressed trickster energy can erupt as self-sabotage, reckless behavior, or destructive rebellion. The psyche, denied its need for play and contradiction, eventually rebels against its own imprisonment. Jung warned that the more tightly we cling to control, the more violently the unconscious will seek to overthrow it. Chaos, then, is not a mistake, but a balancing force. The trickster archetype carries within it the wisdom that growth is rarely linear. We don't evolve by climbing a straight staircase of success and order. We evolve by stumbling, by falling, by laughing at ourselves, and by finding new paths through the rubble of old illusions. To embrace the trickster is to accept that life is a dance between order and disorder, between seriousness and play. Perhaps you've noticed how some of your biggest breakthroughs came not from careful planning but from accidents, surprises, or failures. The wrong turn that led you to meet a lifelong friend. The lost job that forced you to discover your true passion. The embarrassing moment that softened your pride and opened you to deeper connections. This is trickster energy transforming chaos into meaning, failure into wisdom, and laughter into liberation. The trickster archetype asks you to question: what rules have you taken too seriously? What part of your identity has grown so stiff that it no longer serves you? And are you willing to allow life's chaos to unmask you, to play with you, to teach you humility? Jung believed that wholeness does not come from clinging to control but from embracing the unpredictable, the paradoxical, the mischievous spirit that runs through every soul. Because in the end, the trickster is not here to destroy you. It is here to remind you that the self you cling to is only temporary, that the universe is larger, stranger, and more alive than your carefully constructed order. It is here to laugh with you, not at you, to shake you awake when you've fallen asleep in your illusions, and to usher you into a new vision of what life can be. When you begin to see the trickster not as an enemy but as an ally, something shifts inside you. What once felt like humiliation or bad luck begins to look more like a hidden invitation. The trickster archetype thrives on exposing illusions, and in doing so, it opens the door to a deeper kind of authenticity. Jung emphasized that growth often comes through confrontation with paradox, and the trickster is paradox embodied, both foolish and wise, destructive and creative, cruel and kind. Consider how children often display trickster energy. They mock authority, ask inconvenient questions, and break rules simply to see what happens. While adults may scold them, beneath the mischief is a natural instinct to challenge boundaries. In fact, children remind us of truths we've buried under layers of seriousness, that life is not meant to be lived only by rigid rules, and that curiosity often flourishes in chaos. To reconnect with your inner child is also to reconnect with the trickster within you. At the same time, the trickster demands respect. Without boundaries, its energy can tip into recklessness. Think of the friend who jokes at the wrong moment, the prank that wounds instead of amuses, or the reckless decision that destroys trust. The trickster, when not integrated, becomes dangerous. Jung taught that all archetypes must be balanced. To embrace the trickster is not to abandon responsibility, but to hold it alongside play. To allow chaos without being consumed by it. One of the most fascinating aspects of the trickster is how it reveals hypocrisy. In mythology, trickster figures often expose the false holiness of gods or the arrogance of leaders. In life, the same energy emerges when lies are uncovered, when the proud are humbled, when the supposedly untouchable are mocked into humanity. This is why the trickster is so unsettling, because it leaves nothing sacred. But that very irreverence can be healing. When no illusion is left untouched, only truth remains. In dreams, the trickster often shows up in strange, humorous, or unsettling forms. You might dream of a clown, a joker, or a figure who bends the rules of reality. These dreams can feel absurd or nonsensical, but Jung would urge you to look deeper. The unconscious speaks in symbols, and the trickster's symbols often point to areas where your conscious life has grown too rigid, too self-important. Pay attention to what is being mocked in the dream. That's often where transformation is needed most. On the journey of individuation, the trickster acts as a gatekeeper. Before you can fully integrate the deeper aspects of the self, you must first confront the instability of your own masks. The trickster pulls these masks off, sometimes gently, sometimes harshly, so that you cannot mistake them for your true identity. It may feel like humiliation, but beneath the sting is liberation, the freedom to stop pretending, to laugh at yourself, and to discover a truer version of who you are. Look at the role of comedians in society. They say what others dare not, revealing contradictions and absurdities that most prefer to ignore. In their irreverence, they often touch profound truths. When an audience bursts into laughter, it is not just amusement, it is a collective release, a moment where the trickster energy unites people in acknowledgement of a hidden reality. Comedy, then, is sacred work disguised as silliness. If you resist the trickster, if you insist on clinging to rigid identities and unshakable order, life will find ways to disrupt you anyway. But if you welcome the trickster, if you allow yourself to laugh, to stumble, to accept imperfection, you discover resilience. You realize that your value does not come from perfection, but from your ability to adapt, to stay open, to embrace mystery. The trickster teaches flexibility, and flexibility is the key to survival and growth. Think of the last time you were humbled by life. Maybe you lost an argument only to realize you were wrong, or you were laughed at in public, or your plans dissolved into chaos. Did you emerge weaker, or did you find a strange strength in the humility? Often, it is precisely in these humbling moments that the psyche expands, becoming more spacious, more compassionate, more alive. The trickster brings the fall, but also the rising after the fall. Ultimately, the trickster archetype calls you to accept life as it really is: messy, unpredictable, and filled with irony. It dares you to laugh at your seriousness, to let go of illusions of control, and to see in chaos not just destruction but possibility. Jung would say that until you make peace with the trickster within, you will always be at war with the surprises of life. But once you integrate it, you begin to dance with chaos rather than fear it, to learn from it rather than resist it, and to find in its laughter the seeds of your own transformation. The trickster also asks us to question what we believe about control. How much of life do we actually direct, and how much unfolds in ways that defy our plans? We love to imagine that our schedules, our goals, our carefully crafted routines are solid, yet the trickster archetype proves otherwise. It sneaks in through coincidence, accident, or irony, reminding us that we are not as powerful as we pretend. And strangely, that realization can be liberating. When you stop grasping for perfect control, you open yourself to creativity, to spontaneity, and to the playful currents of the unconscious. Jung observed that the trickster thrives on duality. He is both divine and foolish, both creator and destroyer, both sacred and profane. This dual nature unsettles us because it does not fit into neat categories, but life itself is rarely neat. By embracing the trickster, we acknowledge the contradictions within ourselves, the parts that long to be serious and disciplined, and the parts that crave mischief and freedom. Integration does not mean eliminating one side, but learning to hold both without collapsing into either extreme. Consider how innovation often emerges. Many discoveries were born from mistakes, accidents, or playful experimentation. Penicillin was discovered when a lab experiment went wrong. Post-it notes came from a failed adhesive. Even great works of art often carry a sense of experimentation, of pushing boundaries, of not following rules. These are trickster moments, chaos giving birth to creation. What looks like disorder becomes the soil for transformation. In relationships, the trickster can be both a gift and a challenge. Think of the partner who teases you in a way that exposes your blind spot, or the friend who makes light of your seriousness just when you need to loosen up. These moments may sting, but they also deepen connection. By laughing together at our flaws, we admit that we are human, and that honesty creates intimacy. Yet, if misused, trickster energy can wound. Mockery without love becomes cruelty, and sarcasm without care can erode trust. To embody the trickster well is to combine humor with compassion, chaos with care. On a societal scale, trickster energy surfaces when institutions grow corrupt or brittle. Revolutions, protests, and even cultural shifts often carry trickster qualities. They disrupt, they mock authority, they destabilize the seemingly unshakable. In America, for instance, satire has always been a powerful tool for challenging political structures. From Mark Twain to modern late-night comedians, humor has served as a mirror that exposes hypocrisy and shakes the collective out of complacency. The trickster archetype ensures that no power remains unquestioned. Dreams also carry trickster energy when they present you with absurd or impossible scenarios. Perhaps you dream of being naked in a public place, or of speaking nonsense that others take seriously, or of a clown leading you somewhere strange. These dreams may seem silly, but their symbolic power is profound. They point to areas of life where your seriousness has become too heavy, where your ego clings too tightly to its image. By confronting you with absurdity, the unconscious invites you to laugh, to release, and to remember that your identity is not as fixed as you think. To ignore the trickster is to risk rigidity. To embrace it is to discover resilience. Jung would encourage us not to see chaos as a mistake but as part of the psyche's natural rhythm. Just as nature thrives in cycles of growth and decay, so too does the human spirit thrive in cycles of order and disruption. The trickster brings decay, but only so that new life can sprout. He brings disorder, but only so that fresh patterns can emerge. So the next time you find yourself embarrassed, surprised, or caught in life's absurdity, pause before you label it as failure. Ask instead, what is being revealed? What mask is being pulled away? What possibility lies hidden in the chaos? This shift in perspective is the essence of working with the trickster. Instead of resenting the disruption, you can thank it for freeing you from illusions, for shaking you awake, for reminding you that life is larger than your plans. To live with the trickster is not to descend into recklessness, nor to cling to rigid control. It is to walk the narrow path between order and chaos, to laugh at yourself without losing respect for yourself, and to find wisdom in foolishness. Jung knew that this archetype, though uncomfortable, is a guide toward wholeness. It tears apart what is false so that what is true may be born. It unsettles you not to destroy you, but to transform you. And if you dare to embrace it, you may find that the chaos you once feared is actually the spark of your own liberation. There is another layer to the trickster that is often overlooked. Its role as a teacher of humility. When we are convinced of our own wisdom, when we cling tightly to the persona we have built, the trickster finds a way to puncture our pride. Maybe you're in a meeting, confident that you have all the answers, and then you mispronounce a simple word or stumble over your presentation. In that moment, the illusion of control crumbles, and everyone including uses the humanity beneath the mask. It can feel humiliating, but it is also liberating. The trickster reminds us that perfection is an illusion and that authenticity is far more powerful than appearances. In many cultures, the sacred and the comic are not opposites, but partners. Native American traditions often tell stories of Coyote, the trickster, who creates chaos but also brings wisdom through his antics. In African folklore, Anansi the spider tricks gods and humans alike, teaching lessons through his mischief. These stories survive because they reflect an eternal truth. Life itself is mischievous, and chaos is as much a part of the divine as order. Jung saw this not as superstition but as psychology. The psyche needs both order and disruption to remain alive. When you allow the trickster into your awareness, you begin to recognize its fingerprints everywhere. The ironic twist of fate, the unexpected laugh in a tense moment, the way truth slips out in a joke, all of these are trickster moments. They remind you that meaning often comes disguised in play. If you ignore them, you risk missing the deeper lesson. If you pay attention, you discover that chaos itself can be a guide. Think of the role of satire in American culture. From political cartoons to late-night comedy, humor exposes truths that polite conversation avoids. A joke can travel where serious debate cannot, disarming defenses and revealing hidden realities. The trickster archetype is alive in these cultural spaces, keeping society honest through laughter. Without it, authority becomes unchecked and illusions harden into dogma. With it, pretension is punctured, and truth finds a way to the surface. But integrating the trickster does not mean giving yourself permission to live in perpetual mockery or chaos. Too much trickster energy can become destructive, eroding trust and undermining stability. The key, Jung would say, is balance. You need enough order to build, but enough chaos to stay alive. Enough seriousness to commit, but enough play to keep perspective. The trickster archetype invites you into this balance by reminding you, over and over, that certainty is dangerous and flexibility is strength. In personal transformation, the trickster often arrives just before a breakthrough. You might feel confused, disoriented, even foolish. Things you relied on no longer make sense. At first, this feels like regression, but Jung would argue that this is the psyche's way of preparing you for individuation. Before you can integrate deeper truths, the old illusions must be broken, and the trickster is the one who breaks them. Chaos precedes clarity. Laughter precedes wisdom. Mockery precedes freedom. Perhaps you can recall a time when life humbled you, and in hindsight you see how necessary it was. The lost job that forced you to discover your real passion, the relationship that fell apart but revealed your patterns of self-sabotage, the public embarrassment that freed you from perfectionism. These are trickster gifts, wrapped in discomfort but carrying the seed of transformation. You did not choose them, but they chose you. And through them you grew. To integrate the trickster is to allow space for surprise in your life. It is to approach mistakes with curiosity rather than shame, to welcome laughter even in dark times, and to accept that growth often arrives wearing the mask of chaos. Jung would remind you that without the trickster, the psyche becomes brittle, self-important, and closed off. With the trickster, the psyche stays open, flexible, and alive. So the next time irony finds you, when life mocks your seriousness or chaos knocks at your door, pause before resisting. Ask what lesson is hidden in the absurdity. Ask what mask is being torn away. And if you can, laugh not at yourself in cruelty, but with yourself in compassion. For in that laughter, the trickster has already done its work, loosening your grip on illusion and guiding you closer to wholeness. The trickster's presence in your life is not random, it is archetypal, woven into the fabric of the psyche itself. Jung taught that archetypes are patterns older than humanity, existing in myths, religions, and dreams across cultures. The trickster is one of the most ancient of these patterns, and perhaps one of the most necessary. Why? Because without it, we would become rigid, brittle, and trapped by our own seriousness. The trickster makes sure we stay human, not gods in our own eyes, but flawed, flexible, and alive. Think of the way laughter feels after a season of heaviness. You may have been walking through grief, stress, or exhaustion, and suddenly something small cracks the tension. A friend says something absurd, or life presents you with a moment so ironic you can't help but laugh. That laugh doesn't erase the pain, but it reminds you that you are more than the pain. It widens your perspective. This is the trickster offering you a gift, not escape, but relief. A reminder that life holds both sorrow and humor at once. Integration of the trickster is not about letting chaos rule, but about learning to dance with it. To live as if control is absolute is delusion. To live as if control is impossible is despair. The trickster archetype pulls you into the middle path, where humility softens pride and laughter softens rigidity. In Jung's view, individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires passing through the trickster's gate. Only when you've been humbled, surprised, mocked by life itself, can you shed the illusions of ego and step closer to the deeper self. In your relationships, Embracing trickster energy means letting go of the need to be always right, always dignified, always perfect. It means allowing play to enter love, allowing humor to heal wounds, and admitting that sometimes the best way forward is not with control but with surrender. This does not mean tolerating cruelty disguised as jokes. Rather, it means cherishing the kind of humor that deepens intimacy and opens hearts. When two people can laugh together at their flaws, they are stronger than two who cling to masks. In society, the trickster continues its sacred work. When institutions grow corrupt, when leaders inflate themselves, when culture becomes too rigid, trickster figures rise: comedians, artists, rebels who poke holes in the illusion. They are not comfortable. They are often criticized, sometimes even silenced, but without them, society would suffocate under the weight of its own lies. The trickster is the pressure valve, the necessary chaos that keeps systems from collapsing completely under the burden of hypocrisy. And within you, the trickster waits. It is there when you forget to take yourself so seriously, when you allow mistakes to become lessons instead of prisons, when you let laughter heal instead of resisting it. It is there in the ironic twists of fate that leave you humbled but wiser, in the absurd coincidences that remind you the universe has its own sense of humor, and in the moments of disruption that push you to grow beyond who you thought you were. So what would it look like to welcome the trickster consciously? It might mean choosing to laugh at yourself when plans fall apart. It might mean paying attention to dreams where clowns, jokers, or mischievous figures appear. It might mean honoring comedians and satirists as bearers of truth rather than dismissing them as mere entertainers. It might even mean asking yourself, when life feels absurd, what is being revealed here? What truth is this chaos uncovering? Jung would insist that wholeness requires embracing every archetype, not just the noble hero or the wise sage, but also the chaotic trickster. To reject it is to reject a part of your own psyche, leaving you incomplete. To integrate it is to accept that you are both order and chaos, both wisdom and foolishness, both serious and playful. And in that integration, you find freedom, because in the end, the trickster's chaos is not meant to destroy you but to transform you. It is there to unmask your illusions, to humble your pride, to soften your rigidity, and to awaken your soul. It laughs at your seriousness, but only so that you can discover a deeper joy. It disrupts your order, but only so that you can find a more authentic balance. It unsettles you, but only so that you can finally settle into truth. To fear the trickster is to fear life itself. To embrace it is to discover that chaos is not the enemy of meaning, but its companion. And when you can laugh with the trickster, when you can let go of control and still trust the journey, you step into the freedom Jung called individuation. That is the real alchemy, the transformation of the psyche, one insight at a time.